All right, everyone. Well, welcome to LR Masters. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. We're going to play some high-level LR today. This is an advanced logical reasoning class, and the idea behind this is, the passage gives us all the clues we need to make strong predictions. Oftentimes people think these level fours and level fives are a lot more difficult than they are. When we start reading very precisely, very critically, we're going to start spotting these clues that the passage is giving us. The true level of difficulty a question has is directly determined by how well we understand the passage. The question, the answers, everything's based on the passage. So if we really understand what the passage is talking about, we're going to be able to predict, you know, almost all the questions on the LSAT. There's a few that can be a little tricky from time to time, but if we have a strong foundation in what the facts prove, and we understand what the passage is doing, we're at least going to have an idea of what an answer should accomplish, right? And that's something I like to talk about a lot in this class is I'm rarely predicting precise answers. I don't know how that's possible because we don't really know how the LSAT's going to word it. But we should have a very strong idea of what a correct answer is going to do or what it's going to accomplish. For example, a strengthen or a weaken question. We should have an idea of what connection are we potentially strengthening or weakening, right? What is it that the author's not telling us that we either need to make it more likely to be true or less likely to be true? Supported, must be truths. We need to have a very strong handle on what the evidence actually proves and what it doesn't prove. So that way, when you're in the answer choices and you're hearing something that you're like, wait a minute, I can't prove that. Well, if we can't prove it, we can't pick it, right? It's not supported by the evidence. It goes, it's either contradictory to what we know the evidence can prove, or it goes beyond what our evidence can prove. And those are the things that are going to help us throughout the entire test is really having a strong foundation on what our evidence is proving. I'm a big believer on that, and it really helped me make the big jump and score for me is really anchoring myself to the facts, spending the majority of the time on a question right there in the passage. Because the better we understand the passage, the less time we spend in the answers. So hopefully we'll get some very I guess, challenging questions today. And these are all supposed to be level fives or at least really hard level fours. So we'll see what we got. Um, has anybody done any of these questions ahead of time yet? Just curious if there's any of them that kind of stick out to people. No, nothing. All right. Well, we'll just fire it away. Here is the agenda. I do have one not on the agenda. Um, there was a student request that we go over test D. I got it yesterday. And I went ahead and took a look at that one and noticed it was on my list of test D questions that didn't have an explanation. So I went ahead and pre-did that one and wrote the explanation. But I'll walk people through it because that one's a pretty cool question. I'm really a fan of what the passage does. It's very interesting what the passage does, and I want to be able to point people out to it because when you notice it, it just really unlocks. So hopefully somebody can volunteer to do that question with me, since I already did it at the end of class. Even if we have to stay after, I'd love to have walk a volunteer through that question to see if we can pick up what it's doing. It's a pretty intricate question. I really like it. But this is an interactive class. It's one of my favorite classes because you guys ask some of the best questions, and I want to make sure those questions, throw them my way. If I'm reading, if I'm making a connection that doesn't make sense, or if I'm going too fast, you know, pause the train. Throw your hand up. Let me call out and see if there's any question I can answer, if there's something that we need to clarify. It's very important to me that you guys are able to take at least one thing from this class that you can add to your skill set. That's going to help you on your journey. If we do that, we win. So, um, all right, we will jump in and get started. And let me share my screen. And we will get started with the first one here, if it's going to let me. There we go. All right. Cool. You guys should be able to see the syllabus, right? Is that showing? Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. All right. We're going to jump into this very first one here. Boom. I like to do things in prediction mode because it's fun. All right. Test 122, section 4, question 16. There is a difference between beauty and truth. Oh, yeah. What's that difference? After all, hmm, wonder if that is the conclusion there. I read that as there's a difference between beauty and truth because, after all, because everything comes after because is evidence. I'm wondering if that because goes with that first sentence. There is a difference between beauty and truth. After all, if there is no difference, if there is no difference, then the most realistic pieces of art would be the best as well. Interesting, as well. So are you trying to tell me that how does realistic fit with beauty or truth? Since the most realistic pieces are the most truthful. Ooh, okay. There's an assumption right there. Hold up. There's an assumption right there. Before we continue, well, but many of the most realistic artworks are not among the best. Yeah, okay, good. There's an assumption right there in that second sentence. It says, after all, if there is no difference, then the most realistic, which we know to be the most truthful pieces of art, would be the best as well. As well as what? You mean as well as beautiful ones? So right here, I just kind of restate the argument here. The author believes there's a difference between beauty and truth because if there were no difference, then the most realistic art, which is the most truthful art, would also be the best. And yet, many realistic artworks are not among the best. Well, the assumption being made right here that should just jump out to us is that the best artworks is connected to beauty, but they don't explain how, right? There's a connection because it's saying there's a difference between beauty and truth, and it goes in telling us, because if there wasn't, truth would also be the best as well. Oh, so you must be assuming then that beauty is the best? Otherwise, where's this as well stuff going on? So this author's argument right here is depending on the idea that being the best is equaling somehow being beautiful, and being realistic is being truthful, right? They're kind of arguing here that realistic, truthful works, they're not always the best. So truth is not equal to beauty. It's kind of what they're throwing at us here. But that only makes sense if the author is assuming that best artworks or beautiful art is among the best, right? Because if that's not true, then the whole argument falls apart. So right away, when I'm reading an argument, the first thing I'm asking myself, once I realize it's an argument and I separate the evidence and conclusion, I'm always asking myself, hey, wait a minute, is this flawed or incomplete? I call it broke. I call flawed arguments broken. Like, is it broken? Meaning your evidence, how you're evaluating your evidence is broken. Like you're committing some sort of fallacy, part to whole, sufficient for necessary, correlation, causation, that type of thing. That's a broken argument. That means how you're getting to your conclusion is broken. Or is it just incomplete? An incomplete argument is what we see most of the time. It's an incomplete argument. And that means there's something else that the author thinks is true, the necessary assumption, that they're not telling us. And so I made it a habit of every time restating the argument back. Wait, you believe conclusion because evidence. Because when you do that, that just makes it clear. Oh, hold on a minute. You're also thinking this other thing is true because if you don't, your whole argument falls apart. And so I made it a practice of making sure that I restate the argument every time. So that way I could identify any time an argument's incomplete, I can easily identify the necessary assumption. Because when you identify the necessary assumption, that's a foundational piece to make predictions. Because if this is a weakened question, well, I'm just going to make it less likely to be true that beauty has anything to do with being the best. If it's a strengthened question, well, I'll make it more likely to be true. I'll just find a piece of evidence that makes it more likely to be true that beauty has something to do with being the best. Sufficient assumption, you just plug that necessary assumption back in there. So hopefully you guys see how that's kind of a key to making a bunch of different assumptions on question types, just recognizing whether or not you have a necessary assumption. And so does that make sense so far? Yeah. Any questions before we jump onto the question at all? We good? All right. Go. Oh, necessary assumption. Well, that that the author's assuming that beautiful artworks are among the best artworks. I don't know what else I'm missing here. Seems pretty obvious. How is this a level five? I don't know. Now, realistic art is truthful is part of the evidence. Now we have that right here. Uh, realistic pieces of art are going to be part of realistic pieces of art are the most truthful. Oh, my highlighter's not working. Right. So the only connection that we have right here that's not being made is it's trying to say that these realistic slash truthful pieces of art aren't among the best, right? As well. And it's like, well, as well, what do you mean? Because you're trying to make the distinction between beautiful and truthful, right? And you can say, well, after all, there'd be no difference. Then most pieces of art would be the best as well. It's like, okay, so as well as beauty, right? And so they're making that beauty best connection there. Hey, the most beautiful artworks are the best artworks. Yeah. Why is this? Yeah. Okay. B, if an artwork contains non-realistic elements, then it's not at all truthful. The argument never claims anything non-realistic is completely untruthful. So it just talks about realistic works being the most truthful. So it doesn't define all others as completely false. That's not it. C, none of the best artworks are realistic. No, the author just says many realistic artworks aren't the best, not none. So this again overstates our evidence. D, only the best artworks are. Here it is. Here it is. I bet you people pick this answer. See, there's the difference. There's a big difference between A and D. Can anybody tell me the difference between A and D? A is right, D is wrong. Does anybody know why? It's not only. Close. Well, maybe. Yeah, that might be it. That might be it. Anastasia, kind of. So it's flipping the order. It's flipping the logical order, right? It's saying that it's trying to say that the author must believe that only the best artworks, are beautiful art. And that doesn't have to be the case. Beautiful art needs to be among the best, right? It doesn't have to be the only type of art that's the best, right? Like it can be like we can have the top echelon of art and the argument, so our argument's about whether beauty and truth are the same, not about limiting beauty to only the best, right? So this is kind of taking the argument in a different direction just because it flips the two. So the author doesn't need this for their point to make sense. A is saying, beautiful art is in the best category. It's not saying all beautiful art or like only beautiful art can be the best art. It's not saying that. That's beyond what the author is trying to prove, and that's beyond what the author believes is true, right? Does that make sense? I hope I articulate. It makes perfect sense in my head. I hope I articulated it correctly, but I bet you that's why this question is hard, right? Because it's miscategorizing what we need to be true. It's going beyond what we need. It's flipping the categories. That makes sense. Really hope I'm articulating that right. And then E, an artwork's beauty is inherently subjective. I don't care. That one's just a bad. Subjective and depends on who's viewing. And this is just background philosophy. It has nothing to do with our argument. So our answer is definitely A. Um, how do we feel about that? What questions do we have? on that one. I think this is a great example. I think this is a great example. It's not about, so great question, Hassan. It's not about being strong. It's about misplacing the categories, right? And see, this is, I think, a big takeaway too. It's never just the strength of an answer by itself. It's what is the strength of the answer doing, right? So I can't stress enough advice out there of, oh, don't pick strong answers. How can anybody tell you that hasn't read the passage? What if you need a strong answer, right? Maybe the passage requires a strong answer. Who knows? And that's why that kind of blanket, I call them silver bullet rules and shortcuts. I never paid attention to any of that because to me, the only thing that matters is what the passage actually says, what the question is actually asking, and then what the answer that we need. I think Nate talked about it today. Nate or Ben were talking about today on the pod when they were talking about, well, you can skim the answers and get rid of the ones that say some because your answer needs to say all or most, and some just isn't going to cut it. It's not because some is too weak. It's because some doesn't get you accurately into the category that you need to be in, right? And it's about the technicality of it, right? Because many would do the same thing some is doing in that case. Well, how much is many? I don't know. Many can be, just more than one, right? And so it's important to really have a strong understanding on what you're looking for, I think, because then you know why, if an answer's too weak or too strong, it makes sense. Why it's incorrect or why that one is correct, or you see the difference between the two. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, is it Munir? Did I say that
Yeah,
correctly?
yeah, you did. Um, for me, the main reason why I eliminated D was because I just felt like it was almost putting words in the author's mouth that like just were
Hmm.
not there when it comes to like it's making a claim that just was not there at all. Is that really like just good enough grounds to eliminate it, or am I kind of just
I think that's if I
simplifying it too
understand.
much?
Well, no, if I understand what you're saying, that I mean that you are that answer is saying more than the author is actually saying.
Hmm.
The author is saying that, hey, the most beautiful artworks are among the best in best art. It's not saying that only beautiful art is the best. It's not isolating, best art down to only one category, right?
Yep, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Haley, yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious. I got to A, but initially I was a little bit like, um, I didn't love the phrase like the most beautiful artworks are the best artworks. Like in my mind, when
Hmm.
I first read that, I thought like the most, we didn't have anything about like degrees of like the more beautiful, like what makes something more beautiful than less. We just know
Yep.
like the beautiful ones are among the best. And that's kind of
Yep.
my prediction. So then when I saw the most beautiful, I was like, oh no, like
I'm
that's
so
not what
glad you
I'm
picked
trying to
that out.
say.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad you picked that out because I didn't even catch it. And I didn't catch it because I'm going to tell you why I didn't catch it. Well, it didn't register with me because I knew, okay, if beautiful art has to be in the best category, then wouldn't the most beautiful of the beautiful art also be in the best category?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And that's something that the author has to agree with, right? And I go back to Nate and I once debating about necessary assumptions, and where he was saying that the thing with necessary assumptions is sometimes the correct answer can seem like it comes out of left field. And I go, yes, but if you understand the umbrella that it's under, then you understand why it's right. And he was like, I don't know about that. How about this? And he fired away at, hey, Herb smokes cigarettes. Herb has cancer. Therefore, Herb's cancer caused his cigarettes. Or Herb's cigarettes caused his cancer, right? And it's a necessary assumption question. And the correct answer is aliens from Mars didn't cause cancer with their ray guns. And I'm like, yeah, that would be the correct answer because the umbrella necessary assumption is nothing else on the planet and apparently in space caused Herb's cancer other than the cigarettes. That's the necessary assumption that the author has to agree with. That's what they believe to be true. So therefore, any other potential cause has been ruled out. So the LSAT can give us some crazy out of left field cause. And yes, the author has to agree with that. Because remember, the correct answer for a necessary assumption question is something the author must say, yes, that's true. If they say, no, that's not true, well, then their argument would fail, right? And if the argument, if how could the author believe that beautiful art has to be among the best art if they don't believe that the most beautiful art has to be among the best art? That wouldn't make sense. Does that
Yeah, it
explain it?
helps. Yeah, it does. Because
Yeah.
it's not saying like the more beautiful the art, the better the art.
Correct.
Like I put that
Correct.
in there. Yeah, I read it that way,
Correct.
but that's not what they said.
And that's why I think being so influenced by keywords like most, some. It's like, whoa, whoa, hold on. What exactly does that mean in context of that specific answer? What exactly is that answer specifically saying with that ingredient, right? I just look at, word strength as like ingredients. You throw a word in there and that could maybe it adds a little too much salt to one answer, but yet it's the perfect amount of salt on another answer. We don't know until we actually understand, well, what recipe are we cooking with? I mean, what dish are we trying to make here? And that's why I'm a big believer on understanding what a correct answer needs to accomplish so you can judge your answer up against what it needs to accomplish. All we need an answer to do is say or align with beautiful art belongs among the best. We don't need it to go, it goes too far when it says when it says the author must agree that the only art out there that's the best is beautiful art. It's like, well, no, the author doesn't have to believe that to be true, right? It doesn't have to believe that to be true. Um, because it actually, our evidence contradicts D. Now that I realize it, do we see that? Somebody quickly point out to me where our evidence contradicts D. Come on, you guys, precise readers. Somebody's going to catch it. Jocelyn, do you got it?
I think I do, because in the second sentence it says, then the most realistic pieces of art would be the best as well, insinuating that they would be a second category.
That
And
they could be part of the best category.
yeah,
Yeah. And then what's the other piece of evidence that we have that says maybe realistic art is part of the best category? Anastasia, do you see it?
Yeah, I think so. Because in the last sentence it says, but many of the most realistic artworks are not among the best. And when it says many, it insinuates that yes, many are not among the best, but then that means many are among the best. Because
Exactly.
many, yeah.
Exactly. So you're saying there's more than one that's not among the best, but how many are not among the best? Every time you see many, you should just go, how many? Right? Right away. Right? Because if you're telling me only some are, or some of them aren't part of the best, so are you telling me some are? Is that what you're trying to say? And if that's the case, then that directly contradicts D right there and it automatically rules it out. And this is where being really anchored into our evidence, the passage gives us the clues. It really does. Great job, you guys. Great job picking that out. Yeah, I love it. Great job. Let's get our points and win real quick. Yay, we win. All right, let's go to the next one. Any questions on that one? Are we good? Is many mutually exclusive with all? Alex, can you help me with that one? What do you mean by that? Many just means more than one. That's it. Doesn't mean anything beyond many. It just, oh, more than one. That's all we can prove with many. No, we can't not read all because it means more than one. We don't know. And so that's the point. So I don't know if people have heard me talk about this. I haven't talked about it in a while, but there's two types of quantifiers. There's committal and non-committal. Committal is going to commit us to something specific, right? Which is all. That's 100%. Most, it's going to commit us to above 50%, right? Least, it'll commit us to under 50%. Um, None, that commits us to zero, right? Some doesn't commit us to anything other than at least one, right? And many doesn't commit us to anything other than, well, more than one, right? That's it. That's all we know to be true about them. So anytime I can't think of a single passage where they said many and we were supposed to read that as all. I can't think of a single example, but I don't want to say it's never happened. I don't know all the questions by heart, but I'm saying that I read it as, okay, so more than one. Okay, got it. But how many? And every time I read some or many, I'm always saying, wait, well, how much? Right? Just recognizing the awareness that we don't have a conclusive figure. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's rock this one. Where are we at? Oh, here we go. Okay. 124, 325. Principle. Meetings should be kept short. Damn right they should be. Addressing only those issues relevant to a majority of those attending. Okay. A person should not be required to attend a meeting if none of the issues to be addressed at the meeting are relevant to that person. Okay, so we have two rules, essentially. 3, meetings need to be kept short. They need to address the majority. They need to address the issues relevant to the majority, and anybody shouldn't be required to a three, I guess. Anybody shouldn't be required to attend a meeting if none of the issues to be addressed at that meeting are relevant to that person. Okay. So if they're in the majority, okay, I'll get to that in a second. Let me think about that. Application. Okay, here we go. So this is like we're going to be doing a lot of this in law school. Here's the rule, the application, and then we're gonna be told to make the conclusion. So we're doing the RAC part of IRAC here. Application. Terry should not be required to attend today's 2 o'clock meeting. Oh, all right. So the author believes Terry should not be required to attend today's 2 o'clock meeting because meeting should be short, should only address relevant to the issues relevant to the majority, and a person shouldn't be required to attend a meeting if none of the issues are relevant to them. Therefore, the author must be assuming that these issues are either not relevant to Terry personally, which would get Terry out of the meeting, that Terry's in the majority and the issues aren't relevant to the majority, which then would be like, why are we having the meeting at all? Or the issues themselves aren't relevant to the majority, so there's no reason to even have the meeting. Or the meeting's going to be long. But I don't think the meeting's going to be long really plays into it because this is Terry specifically shouldn't have to do. So I don't see how that's going to play. Could, but so the author's assuming one of those three things to be true. They have to be. Interesting. All right, let's see. You guys see how I made that connection? Oh, repeat the three. So think about it. If meetings should be kept short, they have to address only those issues relevant to the majority of those attending. A person should not be required to attend a meeting if none of the issues to be addressed at that meeting are relevant to that person. So if Terry doesn't have to go to the meeting today, if Terry should not be required to attend the 2 o'clock meeting, it's either because the issues aren't relevant to Terry at all, or Terry's in the majority, but the issues going to be covered aren't going to be relevant to the majority. Therefore, why are we having the meeting? Therefore, why is Terry shouldn't have to go? Or Terry could be in the minority, but the issues are relevant to Terry and the minority, but they're not relevant to the majority. Therefore, why are we having the meeting? Terry shouldn't have to go. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's got to be that's all I know to be true in this argument. So if we're going to strengthen this, we're going to weaken this, I'm going to hone in on those things, right? Um, oh, okay. So our job is here. We got to find this is which one of the following is true most justifies the stated application. So the application is this. We need to justify this conclusion, right? That's the idea. We need to justify the conclusion here. So the idea then is essentially we need to find a we need to find an answer that proves Terry meets the condition in the principle, right? So it's going to be one of the three things. It's either A, the issues that we're going to talk about have nothing to do with Terry, shouldn't have to go. B, Terry's in the majority, but the issues going to be talked about are in the minority, so therefore we shouldn't have the meeting, therefore Terry shouldn't have to go. Or Terry's in the minority, but the issues aren't going to be covered by the majority, so we shouldn't have the meeting. Terry shouldn't have to go, right? It's going to be one of those three things. Go. A. The only issues on which Terry could make a presentation I don't care. Terry's not making presentations. I don't know Terry's making presentations. The only issues on which Terry can make a presentation at the meeting are issues irrelevant to at least a majority of those who could attend. Yeah, but this is talk. This is about Terry making presentations, but we don't know what else is going to be talked about, and we have no evidence that Terry's the only one making presentations. So this doesn't help. B, if Terry makes a presentation, again, I don't care about Terry making presentations. So I'd be out on that right away. If Terry makes a presentation at the meeting will not be kept short. Okay, but is Terry making a presentation? I don't know. I can't prove that, so that doesn't help. See, no issues relevant to Terry could be relevant to a majority of those attending the meeting. Yeah, that means either they're having a meeting only covering a topic relevant to the majority, so which isn't relevant to Terry, he's out. B, they're covering topics relevant to Terry, but not the majority. No issues relevant to Terry could be relevant to a majority of those attending the meeting. So that means he's in the minority in that case. And then those topics couldn't be relevant to the majority, which violates the first rule of the principle, or the second rule of the principle, effectively violating the rule for having a meeting to begin with. So Terry doesn't need to go because there shouldn't be a meeting anyway. Yes, that's it. I would not have predicted it to say that, but what's protecting us is when we go in and we know it has to accomplish one of those three things to get Terry off the hook. So if we know why Terry could get off the hook to begin with, we go in and see how answer C gets Terry off the hook. So that's got to be our answer. Unless I'm misreading it, that's got to be our answer. D, if Terry attends the meeting, a different set of issues, which different how, will be relevant to a majority of those attending than if Terry does not attend. Okay, this is confusing. This principle doesn't care about how Terry's presence affects the issues relevant to the others. That's not how this works. The issues dictate whether or not either A, somebody's gonna has to be there or not, or B, whether we're having a meeting at all. So this is not helpful. E, the majority of issues to be addressed at the meeting are not relevant to Terry. I don't care. I only need one. Again, here you go. Here you go. Most. Okay. So you're saying some will be? And we don't know how that affects with the majority, whether or not we're having the meeting, but we do understand that some issues are relevant to Terry. So according to the rule, Terry needs to get his butt to the meeting. I mean, that's just it there. So the answer is going to be C on this bad boy here. What do we think? Carlos, you got a question?
Yes. Hi,
Yeah.
Robert. Thank you.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have two questions. The first one, um, I'm kind of reading, I'm being very critical in the way I read this principle.
Mhm.
So Um, could we have picked an answer that said something like, and again, it doesn't say how long is too sh or how short is too short, but if could we have picked an answer that said something like, the meeting has the meeting includes topics that are relevant to Terry, but it is too long or it is long. Could we have picked an answer that said something like that? Would Terry still be off the hook?
Um, well, I don't think the tough part is
Yeah.
it didn't say that though, right?
Yeah, because
And
I'm
so
yeah.
I just don't sit back and hypothesize. Well, what if an answer said that? What if but it didn't though, right?
Yeah.
The LSAT's hard enough, just realizing what it did say. So, I've never engaged with hypothesizing. Well, what if the answer said this instead?
Hmm.
It
Yeah, I'm
didn't.
just
Because if that could work, then you're having a contradictory, but then we're like, well, but we shouldn't be having the meeting though. So if we shouldn't be having the meeting, then why does Terry have to go to a meeting we shouldn't be having? And that
okay.
kind of goes against, why C is correct. Because it's like, well, yeah, Terry shouldn't have to go because there shouldn't be a meeting.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
No.
so because then even in that question, the problem I have with that answer is, okay, but if there's issues relevant to Terry, do they violate the majority rule? I don't know. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I just I don't know with that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because I'm
don't
just thinking of
think
what
so. It does off the top of my head, it doesn't strike me as that would work because I'm like, well, then we shouldn't be having the meeting to begin with, which that then gets Terry off the hook.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking of like how like what would constitute something for Terry to not go. Um, so my other
Well,
question
it
was,
either doesn't have to be relevant to Terry. That'll
yeah.
that gets Terry. It's the three things that I said. The three things get Terry off the hook. Either A, and that's why I said the short thing. I don't know. I kind of left that one out because the author was specific to Terry. So I was like,
Hmm.
the short
Okay.
thing I kind of just left alone. But yeah, if it said the meeting is going to be long, well, that's the opposite of short, because I don't know what does short mean. Short to
Right.
me could be short to you. I don't know. That's subjective. But short versus long, that's more objective. And so if you're saying, well, we're supposed to keep a meeting short, this is going to be long, you're already categorizing it as long. Okay, well, hold on a minute. Then why are we even having the meeting? That violates the application, right? Because you got to remember that rule is in place, and we're having to figure out what must be true in order for that rule on its own to justify the application that Terry shouldn't be required, right?
Okay.
That's the
Yeah.
mission of this question is we have to justify that. Yeah.
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 Um, yeah. And then the application says should not be required.
Hmm.
And the first sentence says addressing only those issues. Like there's nothing in that sentence that mentions a rule of not being required. So I was
I
kind
don't
of
know what you mean.
confused. Like, okay, so the second sentence of the principle clearly says a person should not be required to attend if so and so. But the first sentence doesn't mention any of that.
It
Like,
doesn't, yeah, because the first sentence is about why are we having the meeting at all. So the first sentence is there blanketly saying nobody should have to attend if because we shouldn't be having a meeting. Second
hmm
sentence is about letting a specific person off the hook. And that's why I took those two things apart and said, well, you're either A, with the second sentence, you don't have to go if the issues don't pertain to you. But then B and C, the two other things I said, it was kind of in reverse order. I went back up and said, well, the meeting is shouldn't even be there, right? If we're covering topics for the minority and not the majority, then we shouldn't even have a meeting, which
hmm
using that application of the rule, we can get Terry off the hook. So this is a great example of what we're going to be doing in law school, where we're going to have to take issues and we're going to have to take rules and how can they be applied into different situations, right? And if the rule states that, meeting has to meet these two requirements to even have a meeting, and one of those two requirements aren't met, well, then my client Terry doesn't have to go to said meeting that should not be taking place.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I just want to get the
No.
technicalities down.
Oh, yeah, it's great questions, man. Great questions.
Appreciate it.
Katie, yeah, how can I help?
Just to clarify, it's not D because the principal doesn't have to do with how Terry affects the meeting. Because I was between C and D, mostly because I didn't understand
Yeah.
D. So I just want some
Okay.
clarity on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So the whole point of D is it's confusing, but it's also irrelevant, but it's confusing because if Terry, okay, stop, full stop right there. Is Terry though? The whole point we're trying to justify is Terry shouldn't have to go. Right. But now the answer is going, well, if, and it's like, okay, well, hold on. Do we have evidence of anything that happens after if? Right.
Hmm.
But if Terry attends the meeting, well, wait, how does that affect him? Not even, he shouldn't even have to, though, according to our conclusion, he shouldn't even have to.
Yeah.
So, but if Terry attends the meeting, a different set of issues will be relevant to a majority of those attending. Okay, a different set of issues, but you're not saying that there's not going to be issues that doesn't affect Terry.
Hmm.
If Terry attends the meeting, a different set of issues will be relevant to the majority of those attending than if Terry does not attend. Great. What are the issues to begin with? Are they relevant to Terry? Are they not relevant to Terry? Are they relevant to the majority? Are they not relevant to the majority? D doesn't commit to anything. It just says, hey, if Terry comes, we're going to talk about different stuff. If
Mm.
Terry doesn't come, we're going to talk about different stuff.
Mm.
Wait, what different stuff though? We would need that extra piece of information that we don't have. And this is a great example of we would have to add to this answer choice in order to make it conclusively say something
Got
because
it.
it just says different. We have no idea what even that means.
Okay. Thank you.
Makes sense? No,
Mhm.
great question. Great
Thank you.
question. We do that a lot in answer choices, believe it or not. When we're stuck between two answers, I promise you one of them doesn't say what you think it says. This is where we have to go back and be very nitpicky, just like we were in the last question. One of them doesn't say what we think it does. So we have to kind of hit reset, re-look at it, and be very precise with it, right? And when you are, you'll see what the difference is between the two, right? And oftentimes the wrong answer you're looking at is going to be more gray and non-committal and less specific than the one you're actually looking at. And you're going to realize that you're adding more to it than what it actually says. And then once you realize you're adding more to it, drop out. Just, oh, nope. Because we're not the wrong answer attorney. We're not here to help wrong answers. So we don't want to add any of our own evidence, any of our own assumptions. We just want to understand what the answer says for itself. Very big thing. If you start paying attention to that, you're going to get points today. Because that is the most common mistake I see that I know I made, but I see people, especially in the 170s, make, is they overinterpret answers to mean something that they don't actually mean. It's a big thing. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Any other questions on this one? No, we're good. All right. Let's get our points. Yay, we win. Okay. Let's do it. 124 to 26. Editorialist is chiming in with an ever so important opinion. Some people, how many people, argue that highway speed limits should be increased to reflect the actual average speeds of highways drivers. I am one of those people. I like to drive fast, which are currently 10 to 20% higher than the posted speed limits. Okay, so some random undisclosed amount of people argue that highway speed should be raised to raised 10 to 20% higher than they are now? Why? because any such increase would greatly decrease highway safety. Wait, any such increase would greatly decrease highway safety. Oh, whoa, that's not evidence. That's a conclusion. Any such increase would greatly decrease highway safety. Yeah, why do you think that? As past experience teaches, higher average highway speeds would result. Why? How many people are actually speeding? Since even though most drivers who currently violate speed limits would obey higher ones, why would you all of a sudden assume that they're going to obey higher speed limits just because we raise it to what they're currently driving? Maybe they're going to drive faster. Almost all drivers who obey current speed limits would likely increase their speed. You're assuming that the people obeying speed limits are actually driving speed. Okay, so hold on. The author here believes that raising speed limits would greatly decrease highway safety because past experience shows that when speed limits go up, average speeds go up. Okay. And the author thinks that's dangerous. Even though most, violators might slow down to match new speed limit, that's a big assumption. Where's that evidence coming from? And most people who currently obey the speed limit would now drive faster. And in order for highway speeds to go up, you would have to think that the people going up, they could still just shoot up and you still could. Yeah, so right away, there's a bunch of assumptions being made right here. The author's assuming that the average increased speed actually leads to less safety. We don't have any proof. They're just assuming that to be true. The next thing they're saying is people who don't currently violate speed limits do actually drive the maximum speed limit. And they will, in fact, increase their speed to match the new speed limit. We have no evidence that they actually do that, though. The evidence stated is that they obey speed limit. But if speed limit's 60 and they're driving 50, how do you know that raising it to 70, they're not still going to drive 50? Because maybe they drive slower than the actual speed limit because, I don't know, they're scared to drive on the highway or something. I don't know. So that's a big assumption. But you're also assuming here, now that I think about it, the safety loss the safety loss from increasing the speed isn't balanced by any safety gain, though. Because now that we think about it, we know nothing about the safety issues related to people driving too slow compared to traffic. I'm telling you what, do I got anybody that lives in Texas here? Any Texas people? Yeah, drive on, what was it, 35 in Dallas? Man, I felt like I was on the Autobahn. I loved it. I loved every minute of it there. But good luck driving 10 miles under the speed limit there. You're gonna get ran over. Like, no, that's not gonna work. That's dangerous. You better speed up. You better speed, actually, otherwise you're gonna cause the problem. So, and interestingly here, the argument also assumes that people who do violate speed limits will automatically start obeying these new ones. What if they start speeding past them? Because I'm going to tell you, as somebody who is a habitual speeder, I'm going to tell you right now that when I'm in, I don't know, when I'm in Seattle and the speed limit's 60, I'm doing 75. But when I'm in Texas and the speed limit's, 80, I'm doing 90, right? I mean, maybe more, depending on where I'm going. So I think that's a big assumption there. I don't know. I probably told you guys too much. Oh, well. Wow, some big assumptions. We have any questions on this one? No. Author's just making huge assumptions here. Let's just destroy this argument. Oh, we're going to weaken it. Yeah. So here, I want to find evidence that shows, hey, raising average speed limits actually doesn't affect safety that much. Raising speed limits might not, or raising speed limits might not raise average speeds. That would kill this. That would kill this argument right there, because the whole thing is like, hey, raising average speed limit is dangerous. Oh yeah? Well, if I raise the speed limit, it's not actually going to raise the average speeds. So that would undermine this argument. If I could find evidence that shows like maybe even higher speed averages beyond a certain point, like don't actually equate to lower safety. Maybe maybe getting everybody to drive faster to match each other's speed actually increases safety. That would be a great one here. Or maybe there's some other safety related factor I'm not thinking about. But the idea here is the big thing here is I want to undermine the idea that increasing speed limit is going to, I want to, I want to lessen that connection between speed limit and lowered safety. Yep. That's what I'm looking for. Some drivers, how I need more than that. Some drivers who obey current speed limits would not change their speeds after the induction of new speed limits. Okay, so at least one driver won't, but at least one driver will. That's just not conclusive enough to do anything. The editorialist here doesn't claim that every driver will go faster, just that, most will. But if some don't change, how many is some? I don't know. It doesn't hit the argument. This doesn't get us where we want to be. B. Uniformity of speed. Oh, I love it already. Uniformity of speeds among vehicles. Please help me with safety here. Uniformity of speeds among vehicles is more important for highway safety than is low average highway speed. Boom. We win. Yes. This will say because in their own argument, these speeders who are actually speeding are going to stay put and these other people are going to raise up to match. It's actually going to close the gap. The evidence proves that there's going to be more uniformity, not less uniformity. And then this evidence says, actually, when we get uniformity, we have better safety. Oh, okay, we win. C, most drivers who drive 10 to 20% faster than current speed limits have never been involved in a highway accident. So I appreciate the anecdotal evidence here, but just because most haven't, some have. Okay. That doesn't help. That's just some statistical noise. D, some drivers, how many drivers? At least one driver violates current speed limits would also violate higher speed limits. Yeah, I would. That doesn't help the argument. E, most drivers who violate current speed limits determine their speeds by what they believe to be safe in the situation. Again, what do they believe? That we would also need more evidence to state how that belief affects this specific 10 to 20% speed limit raising and all that other stuff. And we don't have any of that information. So we would have to add more into this or get more information beyond this. And this doesn't give us anything at all. So B is definitely going to be our winner here. Expand on why D is wrong. D, well, that's it right there. Some drivers who violate current speed limits would also violate the higher speed limits. Put a number on it. We don't have a number. How does that affect anything? Some just means at least one. So does that mean 1%? Does that mean 99%? The varying levels of who's doing it would definitely affect whether or not average speeds are increased or not, right? So we don't know. In this case, some is undefined. We don't know what that means. And I think the other thing that we also have to think about, if I go back to my evidence, most drivers currently violate speed limits would obey higher ones. So we already know some won't. So we already know D really. At the extent of what D provably says, we already know it to be true anyway. And it already fits in the argument because we already have evidence proving D is true. Like some drivers won't lower their speeds to obey the new speed limit because we only know that most will, some won't. So again, how many some, I don't know, but we already know D to be true. So it doesn't help. It doesn't move the needle on the argument. It's already part of the evidence. It's what completes that sentence of most won't, most will obey the new speed limit. Okay, so you're telling me some won't? Does it make sense? And that's something that I think is really important to be doing is as you're reading evidence, when it gives you, an incomplete piece, think about what else has to be true to complete it. If you're telling, I think, forgive me, somebody brought it up earlier on, I think on the first question, or maybe the second question. So you're saying, well, most people do this thing. Okay, so you're telling me some don't do that thing then, right? Yeah. Is it Xena? Did I get that right? Oh, I think maybe Xena froze. Okay. I'll come back. Any other questions on this one before we lock it in? I think we're gonna win this one too. No? We good? Oh, you guys are easy tonight. All right. Go, 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 go. All right, we win. Good. We won all the questions. All right, I will do this one. We have 4 minutes. I will, Zena, are you ready? Do you have your question? Okay. I'm gonna bring up the other one. I'll drop it in the chat. Oh, let me pull it up. Oh, sorry guys, I stopped sharing my screen. Let's do this one real quick. There we go. All right. I think this is a fantastic question. Anybody want to volunteer to do this one with me? I'll walk you through it. Elena, is that right?
Elena, yeah.
Elena. See,
Close.
I was going to mess somebody's name up tonight. All right, so we're going to go do this one, and you can do it. It's a great question. Let's go.
So the author says, if the council approves an initiation, then funding has been secured. So, okay, for it to
I'll
be
blow it
approved,
up.
funding has to have been secured. But for funding to be secured, the mayor's signature is required and the legal review must not have failed. Okay, so it's all just things that are required for this initiative to be approved, or for any initiative.
Mhm.
In the case of the new initiative proposal, the legal review failed. Okay, so that means that funding couldn't have been secured, so it couldn't have been approved.
I like
So
that. So
not,
say that again. Say that again.
it said the legal review failed, which means that funding couldn't have been secured, so it couldn't have been approved.
All right, I like it. I like where you're going with this.
So we cannot say for sure whether the council approved the new initiative proposal.
Oh,
Okay.
what's going on with that argument?
It goes against the first requirement.
I love it. I love it. Yes. And so I think this is one of the things that's challenging about this question is whether or not people catch that the first sentence is giving a necessary condition, right?
Yeah,
And you caught it. Great job. Yeah. And so when you catch that, then you catch that, wait a minute, that conclusion isn't matching, right?
right.
Conclusion is not matching. So that right away, I think is the big takeaway from this question is just realizing that that's not matching. What else do you think about this? Anything else that's standing out to you?
They give you a lot of reasons or requirements for the initiative to be approved, but kind of don't touch deeper than just putting them out there. So I don't
Okay.
think one would randomly be brought up in an answer or something.
Sure.
But I think the biggest piece is just that the last sentence goes fully against the first sentence.
Yeah. So it's coming to an illogical conclusion, right? And I think that's the takeaway from this, I think is really good. And so I'll go to the question and then we'll see how we can make a really strong prediction, right? Oh, come on, go, go, go. All right. Now what do you think you need to do?
Which one of the following is most similar in its pattern of reasoning to the argument above? So we have an action or like a if statement. So if it approves, and then they list these requirements saying that all of these have to happen. If they don't, it won't be approved. Then it states that one of the requirements didn't happen. The legal review failed.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has to end on a conclusion that goes against one of the requirements. Maybe the
I
first,
like it.
but maybe
Yeah,
any.
I like where you're going with it. I like where you're going with it. And so here I would go a little detailed though on this particular type because it gives us something. So in the first sentence, you were spot on. We're given a necessary condition. And for me, there was always two ways I could rephrase an argument. I like to take an argument, a specific situation like this in parallels. So I wanted to cover this because it was a parallel question. So I wanted to bring it. In parallels, there were two ways that really helped me attack parallels to make best parallel predictions I could. It was either using A, B, C, X, Y, Z variables when appropriate. Uh, I never diagrammed anything. It was just either just taking the specific subject or topic and generalizing it using a variable because I know that the subject itself, we're talking about initiatives and funding. I know that's probably irrelevant to my parallel. So it's going to have a different topic, different requirements, different conditions, but I would assign a value to it just so I could see it, right, in my mind. And here you can say, okay, outcome X requires condition Y, right? Or outcome requires necessary condition. Either way, right? Either way is appropriate. You could say either use XYZ variables or just articulate it, right, in an intuitive way. And then we go to the second sentence and you picked out, well, hold on, why that necessary condition also has necessary conditions for it, which is A and B. Or in
Right,
this case, necessary condition one has two necessary conditions for it, right? And then we see in the next sentence that one of those necessary conditions of the big necessary condition is violated. Well, then therefore, you were spot on saying, well, then we probably shouldn't have the outcome. But then the conclusion comes in and goes, well, we don't know if we got the outcome. Wait, what do you
right,
mean we don't know if we got the outcome? Where are you getting it? You know, like, how are you not uncertain? It has to pass the legal thing. It didn't pass the legal thing. So what are we doing? Right? So, and just spotting that we know our parallel answer is going to do the same. It's going to give us an outcome that has a requirement to get to that outcome. That outcome is going to have maybe one or two or three, or who knows. It might, I probably only gonna have one or two necessary conditions, right? But then one of those necessary conditions is going to be violated. And then it's going to come to that same, well, I don't know, that uncertain outcome, right? And
right,
so as we're going through, the minute something deviates, this is where parallels can become so easy and so fast. The minute an answer starts deviating from that structure, just bail. Just bail right out of it. Right in the middle of the answer, doesn't matter. Hey, well, you're not doing a thing. Now, the only caveat I'll say is sometimes they reorder things. Sometimes the conclusion will come first and the evidence a second. You know, they'll flip-flop it, but you'll be able to kind of just see structurally, like, wait a minute, you're not following the structure. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's do it. And I'll kind of scroll as we go so you can see everything. All right, what do
It
we got for
says
A?
the ancient manuscript is not authentic. For it to be authentic, it must have been produced using ink consistent with the 12th century, and it must not show signs of modern chemical treatment. And this manuscript tested positive for modern chemicals. That somewhat aligned, but then didn't have the random conclusion that goes against one of the requirements.
So what if I told you you could probably get out in the first sentence? Why would I say that?
It doesn't have an if statement
No. So what's the conclusion
of the
of
that
A? What's A's conclusion?
we can't say for sure whether the council approved it.
No, no, A's conclusion.
Oh,
Answer
A.
A. Yeah,
Oh, that conclusion is that it's not authentic.
right. And our conclusion was uncertainty, right?
Right. Okay.
And this
Yeah.
is like, oh, it's not authentic. And here's the deal. I probably would bail and go, no, ours was uncertain. You're concluding something certain. So, because that's different than our conclusion. Our conclusion is like, I don't know. Our
Yeah.
conclusion didn't say, therefore we got the approval. Like it didn't go against our, it didn't like definitively say anything. It's just, well, I don't know. It's like, no, you do know, right? It's illogical, but it didn't like come to a conclusion that was just like definitive like this one. So just on that face, I probably would have bailed and just
Okay.
known that if I'd have got rid of the rest, okay, let me go back and give A little more love, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't pick A without reading them all anyway. And I feel like I have a really strong reason to get out of A, right? Especially when I'm realizing that's the conclusion. It's like, oh, well, we're out of here. And if we go on first pass, isn't that a valid structure?
Yeah.
I think it's valid actually. Yeah. All right. What about B?
If the painting was displayed, then it had been authenticated. Authentication requires expert examination and no outstanding forgery claims. But the gallery's records, the only proof of expert review, were lost in a fire. I think I want to eliminate it now and keep going
I
because
love it. Why?
that means that it could have been
Mm.
reviewed in the past. It just the evidence of it is gone.
Yeah, this one in the answer choice, it's unknown whether or not the records were like we don't know. It isn't we don't know for sure that the condition failed, like in the passage, right? Like our necessary condition failed. We know it failed. In this answer, we don't know that we don't know what happened, right? So it's
Right.
not the same as the original where we have so like in the first answer, in answer A, we have a definitive conclusion which doesn't match. In here, we don't have a definitive necessary condition fail, right?
Right.
Yeah, great job. All right, let's go to C.
If the crew begins work next month, the restoration will finish on schedule. Completing the restoration on time requires that the original blueprints be intact and that no structural damage be discovered. The blueprints have been recovered, but since the building has not been inspected, we cannot yet determine whether the crew will begin work next month.
Mm,
It does bring out something. It has similarities, but I think the fact that it brings out a whole new requirement, it's almost saying that the building has to be inspected as a requirement as well. That's not
hmm.
originally stated, so I'm gonna eliminate that one too.
Okay. Okay. I like it. All right, let's go to D.
It is uncertain whether the system sent a warning message, as the manual override was engaged during the incident. For the system to send a warning message, the sensor must detect a threat. But that detection requires both a clear signal and that no manual override be engaged. I like this one.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
flips it and puts the going against a requirement, like maybe that they're saying we don't know in the
Yep.
beginning, but it still has these requirements that they're saying one didn't happen, but that means we don't know.
Yeah. Because one didn't happen, that means it shouldn't have. We should know, though. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then
Yeah.
just like our passage, and it's saying, "Oh, we shouldn't have known." But great job sticking with this one and recognizing that they flipped it on us, right? They put the
Yeah.
conclusion first instead of at the end. And yeah, this is it. This is the matching illogical conclusion. Our Y requires A and B. A or B fails, well, then I don't know what happened. It's like, oh, no, yeah,
Yeah.
you do. Yeah, you do. You know exactly what happened, right? So great job with that. So let's get rid of E real quick. Oh, let me scroll down. Yep. Let's get
To
rid of E real quick.
qualify for the grant, an applicant typically must have, I'm gonna eliminate it on typically. I think that
Yeah.
needs to be a like certain
Yep.
requirement.
Exactly. And that is fantastic because you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words in. And you're like, nope, I'm off. And so when we're looking at these looking at these parallels, they look way more daunting than they really are. But when you know this well enough, when we know exactly what's going on here, we can pinpoint why these are all messed up and
Right.
exactly why this works right here, right? And it makes these way easier. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest pieces of advice when it comes to parallels and parallel flaws is practice them because your ability and when you're drilling, who cares how long it takes you to get through them? Spend all the time in the world with them because all of you guys are at a disadvantage in studying. I don't care. I'll die on this hill. All of you guys are at a disadvantage of studying because you're not doing games, right? And what games taught was how to really see the if this happens, then that doesn't happen. But if that happens, this doesn't happen. And that type of thinking was really tested and really improved the better you got at games. And it was taking these complex passages and breaking them down really, I believe, was improved through games. And the fact that you guys don't have games anymore, these questions are really beneficial, especially having to take time and articulate, okay, you're giving me an outcome that has a necessary condition. That necessary condition has its own necessary conditions. One of those necessary conditions violates, therefore the outcome shouldn't happen. Oh crap, what are you concluding? Right? That type of processing is practiced best, I think, in parallels all the time. And so I would encourage people not to shy away from them if you're really trying to improve. Yeah.
So
But
do you think that it would be helpful to like go in and do some practicing of like an old logic games section, or do you think that you're better off, since that won't be tested, spending that time on LR and RC?
oh, I fully the pay the cost benefit isn't there to go back
Okay.
there now, I think, to study
Okay.
those because you're not going to be tested on it, right? And
Right.
it
Yeah.
would take a while to develop the rate the return on investment for doing it
Okay.
because they're not easy. If you've never done them, it's a whole nother thing you got to be learning, and you could be exponentially making progress in LRRC just by doing better studying in there that will pay you much more return than just learning games. Right.
Okay.
But
Thank
when
you.
I studied, we had them and we had to have them. So, yeah. Great question. Hey, thank you, Elena. Great job. Great job. All right. I'll end class. I'll stay after, ask her. I can stay after for a bit and answer any other questions. But thanks for coming to class, you guys. I really appreciate it. And hopefully there was something you guys learned today. If you did, leave a review. I always love hearing from you guys. Other than that, good luck studying this week. Hope to see you next week. All right. Bye.